Good evening from Tynecastle for the Hibs Observer post-match debrief as Hibs lose the Edinburgh derby in stoppage time against Hearts here. A really tough one to take. To be honest, a horrible game of football and then a horrible outcome smacked on top of it for Hibs. Craig Halkett scoring the goal to give the home side victory here, a first Premiership defeat of the season for David Gray's side, who now go on to the international break with something to stew on for a fortnight. Probably the worst possible outcome going into an international break for any team. Patrick, thoughts on a bad day for Hibs?
Yeah, well, I think David Gray probably summed it up himself when he said it's been sort of the story of their season, and I don't think you would argue with that. I think it's kind of what we've seen a lot of from Hibs, where they have quite a few chances, they don't take the chances, and then they get undone by just sort of like a lapse in concentration or just an individual mistake. And I don't think he minced his words really when he was speaking post match. I think he called the goal he lost inexcusable. I wouldn't argue with that. It was a very good cross from Kurjota, but when you consider how well Hibs kind of defended over the sort of 92 minutes previously, or however long it was just such a basic thing to switch off and not do. And we've seen that far too many times from this Hibs team this season alone. Those sort of like swashbuckling performances in Europe seem an awful long way ago now. I don't know if you can still call this a kind of European hangover, whether they're still struggling from the manner of their exit in Poland. But I think the worst part is when you look at this game, and it wasn't wholly surprising, the outcome. I think, as you say, not a great game of football. I think there's a few too many players who probably aren't performing at their best, but circumstances mean they need to keep playing. And I think that's part of the problem, is that you have to go with your best team for these fixtures. But if you don't have the options to change things up when you want to, then I think it is obviously going to create problems. And I think we saw that today. We can talk about the substitutions and when they were made a bit later on. But I think really the sort of main takeaway for me was that it felt like we've seen this movie before.
Yeah, it's becoming a wee bit too familiar, I think. So we'll start maybe with the team sheet, perhaps, because I think obviously the Hibs team today was dictated to an extent by who was available and who wasn't. I think namely Jamie McGrath and Miguel Chaiwa, who have generally started off late, and I think Chaiwa, yes, a miss, but I think McGrath, he was fit enough to make the bench, McGrath, but he didn't come on until the 76th or so minute, which probably tells you a lot about how many minutes Hibs thought he had in him with this Achilles problem that he seems to still be carrying. And I think it was a game of not a lot of quality, and I think you've seen again today. You've seen it a couple of times when he's not played really. McGrath, I think he's pretty important for Hibs in terms of how they want to build the ball up the park, because I think the approach, especially in the first half, I think was maybe dictated a wee bit by the fact that he wasn't there. Like, what I mean by that is, obviously Josh Campbell comes in to play that sort of number 10 role, and we know that Campbell, he's not the sort of number 10 in the sense that he likes to drop into pockets and pick up space and finds those wee pockets of space, maybe takes the ball on the turn. It's not really, that's not really his game. He's an aerial threat. He makes good runs. He gets into the box and he can score goals. But so I think if you're going to play Campbell, you maybe need to try and play to his strengths. So we saw a lot of direct football in that first half, maybe up towards in his direction. But I mean, I'm kind of loath to mention this, but like the conditions weren't really conducive to much at all today. Certainly played a bit of a part going forward. The ball didn't really stick. Hibs, it felt as if it was a bit more hopeful than anything going forward at times. I think if you're going to play that approach as well, you need Kieran Doughty to have a good game. He didn't have a good game today. A wee bit off form at the moment. I think, a young player, he's going to have sort of peaks and troughs in his form, but at the moment, he's not quite at it. And this is probably an entirely other discussion, but Hibs don't really have an alternative to him at the moment when he's not playing well. So I think Hibs, they kind of struggled to find ways to hurt Hearts, and I think that was kind of stark throughout. I think in the second half, the likes of Balasser and Mulligan did get on the ball a wee bit more, but not so much in areas that were going to really make a difference in terms of the outcome of the game. There was a lot of, the ball would be whipped around the back line, and then they'd maybe try and, funnel it down the touchline, round the corner. It all just felt a wee bit kind of bitty. And just Boyle's chance was, I can't think of any chances other than Boyle's, really.
No,
the one he hit the bar with. And so that kind of sums that up. And then defensively, you kind of touched on it, I think, because it's a frustrating one, because I think for a lot of the game, Hibs were defensively pretty good. Got Grant Hanley in at the centre of the back three again. He done another good game. Jack Iredale, Warren Ahora, they look quite solid. But then I think when it's a game like this, when it's scrappy and there's not a lot in it, it's going to be decided in moments. And could we distill it into Hearts, when their moment came along, they took it and Hibs didn't?
You could. I mean, look at that effort with Boyle that you mentioned. I think he did everything right. He tries to get over the keeper. He's maybe a bit unlucky that it comes back off the bar. Look at who's in the box. Could he maybe have squared it? But that had that gone in, I think that's maybe a turning point. But for me, I think the big thing was, we mentioned the substitutions before. Darren McInnes spoke at length, actually, in his own post-match interview about the substitutions he'd made, why he made them, going into great tactical detail, and just explaining why he made a triple substitution with about 10 minutes left to play, something like that. And kind of walked us through it afterwards and kind of explained that it was essentially a last roll of the dice, but it was a very kind of deliberate roll of the dice. He was he didn't quite say the reason they won was because of the substitutions, but it obviously had an impact, because Kyrgiota was one of them, who sort of provided the assist for the goal. And it just feels a little bit, I think we were sitting there about 70, 75 minutes and sort of thinking there's not been any subs yet. And it just felt very, very strange. And I think, you wonder, is that two managers who are kind of waiting to see who blinks first? But I think, when you look at the bench that Hibs had, you look at the players they put on, it's just, you mentioned it yourself, it feels like, Hibs obviously tried very hard to get Lyndon Dykes on transfer deadline day. They didn't manage that, and as a result, they have one sort of like physical centre forward in Kieran Bowie, who has not been at his best. I thought of the way that this formation they're playing at the moment, where you've kind of got Boyle and another kind of attacking midfielder, whether it's McGrath, whether it's Campbell, kind of supporting Bowie, is what you're seeing is Bowie is almost becoming so caught up in, I don't know, almost like the physical side of the game. Like, we saw that quite a lot in the first half. That he was sort of grappling with players. He's getting involved in little niggly things here and there, and kind of forgetting, or not forgetting, but maybe it's what he's been told to do, but I don't think it's really playing to his strengths. And we saw last season when he was played up front in a two with usually Boyle, the two of them linked up quite well. I'm not really sure why they've kind of moved away from that, and that was probably part of the reason for not creating an awful lot. I think was that quite often you've got Bowie dropping deep to try and sort of win those balls at the top, but it just feels like there's not really a plan B at the moment. And I think you see the changes they made today. It looked like Nicky Cadden was going to come on at some point, and he didn't. They bring on McGrath for Campbell, which is, it makes sense positionally, but it's for the last 15 minutes, and you're wondering how fit is McGrath. Is he really kind of up to it? Because you've got Junior Hoylett on the bench who could play there as well, but he's maybe not been in in great form himself recently. Dylan Levitt there you could have brought on in the midfield. Dan Barlasso's first derby. He's not played an awful lot of football.
Surprised he played the United.
Yeah. So, I think there's a conversation we had about substitutions. Again, Thibaut Clige coming off the bench really late on. I know there's this, conversation about letting players settle, letting them get used to the hurly-burly of Scottish football. But, it kind of feels like, is he still trying to get up to speed? Is it, just maybe waiting for the right time to introduce him? Because I think as well, I think Martin Boyle himself would say he's maybe not hit the heights he did last season either. And it does feel like you've got too many players who are kind of a little bit out of form at the moment and not an awful lot on the bench to be able to change that. And obviously there's injuries. Today Miguel Chai was out, Joe Newell's still out, Alassana's still out. So you're limited with what you can do. And that feels like the main issue at the moment. And Derek McInnes explaining why he made the subs essentially sort of sounded like he'd sussed out how Hibs were going to play, reacted during the game and thought this is what I need to do to kind of nullify that threat, which was to I suppose sort of shut off that channel that Boyle was going down the left side, and that worked. And you could call it gung ho, you could call it going for broke, but he took a risk, it worked. And they get a goal out of it, they get the win, they get the 3 points. And it just, as I was saying before, it feels like we've seen this movie before with Hibs. It's just it's maybe overly cautious. I don't want to say David Gray was playing for a draw for the entire 90 minutes, but I think it was clear from certainly sort of in the last sort of knock-ins of the game that the one team was pushing for a winner, and one team was maybe happy to take a point. And even David Gray saying he felt if any team was going to score a winner, it would be Hibs. I mean, not 100% sure I saw that. Yes, they had chances. Yes, they hit the bar. Yes, Martin Boyle had the goal chalked off for offside, but Hearts had their chances as well. They had their own moments, and I just think the thing that probably will sting David Gray the most, sting the players the most, is that Hibs don't often do the kind of last minute scrambled winner in the derby. Hearts do it a lot, and I think that's probably the thing that's hard to take for. I think that's the thing that's hard to take for a lot of Hibs fans tonight, is that it has happened. Ross Caldwell, obviously Martin Boyle scoring that late equaliser when he just came back to the club from Saudi Arabia, but the fact it doesn't happen all that often, and it just feels a little bit. It just feels a little bit deja vu, I think.
It is certainly deja vu at the moment. So, folks, we're going to leave it there for tonight. We'll have a fuller reaction on our YouTube channel to the game on Monday once we've had a chance to digest it a bit more, analyse it, go back over it, see if we can make a bit more sense of it. Although, to be fair, after watching that in 90 minutes, it's not one I'm in a hurry to rewatch. Maybe Patrick can rewatch it instead.
I'd rather
we'll drag somebody else in to watch it for us. Okay, so thanks for joining us, folks. A sore one tonight for Hibs, now into the international break. So hope you can find a way to enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll speak to you again very soon. Cheers.